Okay, let's just completely shatter our linear understanding of reality right out of the gate in this explainer. We're going to dive deep into the hidden depths of numbers, and frankly, the human mind itself. Most of us just go through life thinking of numbers as simple everyday tools. We use them to count our groceries, check our bank accounts, figure out how many miles to the next gas station. But what happens when you just keep counting? Where does it actually end? And maybe more importantly, what does that endlessness tell us about our own consciousness? Well, as you'll see by looking at the exact point where hard mathematics crashes into deep spiritual philosophy, we uncover a reality that is literally layered with infinite possibilities. Think about how we usually picture infinity. We typically think of it as just a really, really absurdly big quantity, right? The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson actually captures this perfectly with a totally relatable story. He points out that when we were kids on the playground, trying to come up with the absolute biggest number imaginable, someone would shout, "A million!" And then the next kid would go, "1,000,001," then "1,000,000,000," and "1,000,000,001," until finally someone drops the ultimate trump card, infinity. But there was always that one annoying kid who wouldn't let it go and would just shoot back, "Infinity plus one." I mean, it sounds like an unbeatable playground argument, doesn't it? But here's the thing. Mathematics actually tells a completely different story. The reality is, our old playground logic is fundamentally flawed when it comes to the true nature of endlessness. As it turns out, the actual universe of numbers is far, far stranger than we could have ever grasped as kids. So let's look at the basic math for a second. The absolutely crucial point here is that adding 1 to infinity just gives you the exact same infinity. Think about it. If you have an endless, infinite number of counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, going on forever, and you try to add just one single extra number to that pile, you haven't actually created a larger infinity, you just have the exact same size of infinity you started with. It completely defies our everyday logic, where adding more stuff to a pile is always supposed to make the pile bigger. Now, this completely counterintuitive fact is exactly what laid the groundwork for the revolutionary work of mathematician George Cantor. Before Cantor came along, infinity was just this vague philosophical concept of endlessness. But Cantor asked a really daring question. Can we actually compare the sizes of different infinite collections? And the mind-blowing answer he proved was yes. He discovered that some infinities are genuinely, mathematically, demonstrably larger than other infinities. No way, right? What this means is that mathematics isn't just a flat, endless plane of numbers. It's actually a rigid staircase of expanding magnitudes. We step from simple counting numbers up to real decimal numbers, and finally way up into strange numbers that totally defy ordinary algebra. Let's actually walk up this ladder together and see how these infinities grow. Down on the ground floor of Cantor's discovery, we have what's known as Aleph Null. This represents the infinite set of your basic, everyday natural numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, and on and on and on. Now, even though this list literally never ends, mathematicians actually consider this to be the smallest known infinity. It's the baseline. It's countable, even though, well, it would quite literally take you forever to count it. But then we jump up the ladder. If you start looking at every possible decimal, the number line suddenly contains infinitely more points than just the counting numbers alone. And going even further than that, we hit transcendental numbers. We're talking about numbers like pi or the number e. Transcendental numbers are these wild values you will never, ever find as a solution to an ordinary algebraic equation. They are essentially operating entirely beyond algebra. These are the magic numbers that pop up everywhere in nature. And as it turns out, the infinity of these transcendental numbers completely dwarfs the infinity of our standard counting numbers. Oh, and believe me, it does not stop there. By looking at what mathematicians call power sets, which is just the collection of all possible subsets of a given set, mathematics proves that a power set is always, always larger than the original set. Practically speaking, this means you can just keep creating larger and larger infinities. Reality actually contains levels of magnitude far beyond ordinary counting, with absolutely no final floor in sight. It is literally an infinite hierarchy of infinities. So what happens if we pivot for a moment? What if we apply this exact same endlessly expanding hierarchy to human consciousness? Because mystical and spiritual traditions have been pointing to this exact same idea for centuries. They've just been using a different vocabulary. They argue that consciousness contains levels of awareness far beyond our ordinary day-to-day perception.
The hard sciences prove that reality contains layers way beyond ordinary measurement, and the deep exploration of the mind tells that exact same story. Just think about how perfectly this maps out symbolically. The standard counting numbers map directly onto our ordinary mind. Linear thinking, cause and effect, measuring physical things. Then you move up to irrational numbers, which represent the deeper mind. This is where we find complexity, hidden patterns, things that can't just be neatly reduced to simple fractions. And finally, you reach the transcendentals. This perfectly mirrors the realm of consciousness that is entirely beyond calculation. It's the realm of pure mystery, emergence, and concepts that simply cannot be boxed in by ordinary logic. It brilliantly shows how our linear thinking naturally evolves right into profound mystery.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's use what we'll call the infinity analogy. Let's go back to numbers for a second. Before you even count out 1, 2, 3, or 4, there has to be empty space in which that counting can happen, right? The numbers literally need a space to exist within. Symbolically, we can look at physical objects as our daily experiences and numbers as our thoughts and forms. But the infinite space that holds all of this together, that space is awareness itself. And this is absolutely crucial. When we finally stop obsessing over the counting, when we stop getting completely lost in the thoughts, the objects, and the endless daily experiences, we begin to actually notice the quiet, infinite space that is holding them all. Shifting your identity away from the temporary things being counted and resting in that limitless infinite space is the beginning of realizing I am. It's the profound realization that you aren't the temporary forms passing through, you are the eternal container itself. Making that shift from finite objects to limitless space really changes everything. So you have to ask yourself, are you just a sequence of counting numbers? Just a series of fleeting thoughts and experiences? Or are you the continuum itself? Answering this question pushes us right up that ladder of consciousness we talked about, moving us away from a tightly limited identity and towards something truly, radically expansive. This is where the mystic philosopher Neville completely flips the script on our initial definition of endlessness. Goddard's central idea was that consciousness is the only true reality. So from his framework, infinity isn't just a math problem or a really, really big number. Instead, infinity is the limitless creative capacity of human imagination. For Goddard, the question isn't, how big is infinity? The real question is, what state of consciousness am I currently occupying? Because the assumption you live from, the specific level of awareness you embody, directly dictates the reality you are going to experience. When you take a step back and look at all of this together, the alignment between hard science and deep spiritual tradition is honestly stunning. I mean, we started with kids arguing on a playground, moved through George Cantor's revolutionary world-bending math, and arrived at the limitless nature of the human imagination. They're two completely different systems, mathematics on one side, mysticism on the other, but they are powerfully pointing at the exact same truth. Reality is fundamentally structured in expanding layers. Look at how this scaling lines up across the board. In numerology, the number 6 represents finite, material, human experience, which perfectly matches standard physical awareness and finite numbers. As we move up through 7 and 8, we hit mastery and expanded awareness, which perfectly mirrors the mathematical leap into infinite numbers. Finally, we reach 9, symbolizing ultimate completion and universal consciousness. This is an exact mirror to the mathematical leap into larger transcendental infinities. We are literally mapping a journey from finite physical awareness straight into a boundless, universal mind. So I want to leave you with this final thought right here at the intersection of math and philosophy as we wrap up this explainer. Cantor definitively proved that there is no ceiling to infinity. There is always a larger power set just waiting to be discovered. So we really have to ask, if the universe of numbers literally never stops expanding, why on earth would our minds? Is your consciousness just a fixed, rigid container? Or is it an endlessly expanding hierarchy, just waiting for you to realize how limitless your own awareness truly is? Keep questioning those limits, and we will see you in the next explainer.